The views and content expressed on the following program are provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. They do not constitute legal advice. A podcast is not a substitute for retaining a competent, licensed attorney to advise you on your specific legal situation.
Break the business, play is work and work is play. Power is to creators, have fun along the way. Break the business, doing what it takes. Celebrate success and learn from the mistakes.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is time for Break the Business, where we empower indie creators and have some fun along the way. I'm Ryan Kairalla, and it is a pleasure to have you here this week. We are back in business after taking a week off for the 4th of July, and I'm just so glad to be back in this chair on this microphone. But let me tell y'all, viewers, listeners, your boy is playing hurt this week. All right, I am injured. I was attacked by an assailant. And those of you with the keener eyes that are watching the live stream right now can actually see the injury that I have. I have a pretty large gash from the top of my head all the way down through my eyebrow, below my eye, to like where my cheek, almost to where my lip is. Just a big old slash right there. It was bleeding a couple days ago. Thank God that stopped. But it hurts. I have a huge gash on my face that is very visible if you're watching this on the live stream, and I am in a lot of pain right now. And I was attacked. It was an attack. I was brutally injured. I was maimed by my assailant. My assailant, of course, being my sweet 2-year-old son, Nathan. He says he didn't do it on purpose, but, you know, you never can tell with these kids. You know what the thing is, viewers and listeners? Let me tell you. Let me bring on my co-host, talk to him about this. Gideon King joining us, musician, investor, and frontman for Gideon King and City Blog. How are you, Gideon?
Man, I'm cool. And by the way, I'm willing to do family therapy between you and your son for like $150 an hour. You're getting injured. There's blood being spilled. You need me. You need me to do the family therapy for you.
This might be, we might be irretrievably broken at this point. I don't know if family therapy can save this. What I think I just need, I think we need just CPS to come in and just remove the dangerous threat from the home, maybe for 3 or 4 days, so my wife and I can catch up on some sleep, and then then we'll see how things go from there. You know what it is, Gideon King? Let me tell you what happened here, okay? Because this was very much an accident by my sweet little boy.
And try and tell the truth. That's what therapy's all about.
Yeah. He was just swinging his hands around and just caught me right on the head. But the thing is, toddlers, I don't know why they're made this way. I don't know what it is in the manufacturing, but this is definitely a manufacturing defect. Toddlers have these razor-sharp cat claw nails.
That's true. Yeah.
And just they can pop balloons with them. These things are sharp, and and for some reason they are just filled with this completely unquenchable urge to just fling their hands around wildly. And he was sitting next to me, and he just caught me straight across the face, all the way down. I've been on Zoom calls for the last 2 days with clients. Here's a list of pop culture figures that I've been told I look like. Khal Drogo from Game of Thrones, Nick Fury from the Avengers, Blofeld from the old James Bond series, not the Christoph Waltz Blofeld, but the old school Blofeld who had the cut on his eye. Kratos from the God of War video game series. I've gotten every single one of them. And
what about Brad Pitt and George Clooney, Daniel Craig, and those types of guys? Are people comparing you to them, or I'm just curious?
If only. No. And by the way, the fact that I'm getting compared to these other people, it's not for any of the cool reasons, right? Nobody's saying, hey, wow, Ryan, you look really strong like Khal Drogo. Or you look really cool and awesome like Nick Fury. No, the only thing that I have in common with these otherwise really awesome, impressive people in pop culture is this stupid cut going the length of my head all the way down. And it's the worst thing to have in common with those things. But that's what I've been dealing with this for the last 2 days on client Zoom calls. And now I have to go on a live stream on volume.com with all of our live streaming partners and have this cut on here. But I'm doing it for the viewers and listeners.
There's a way to spin this. And the way to spin this is to simply say, just put aside all this belly aching and talk, and just to simply say, I'm so good at parenting that I care so much that I quite literally bleed for my children. That's it, man. That's all you have to say, and that'll set you up to run for president, to do radio show, podcast. It'll make you empathetic. It'll make you sympathetic. It's all marketing, man. You just gotta hold yourself out there as the best dad in the world because you literally bleed for your children.
And
this is simple, man. This is not a big issue.
And boy, do I ever bleed for my children, because when this initial injury happened, it was gushing. The only thing that stopped me from going to either urgent care or the ER was I didn't want to have to explain to a doctor how this happened. Because as debilitating as my injury was, they would have been even more debilitated by the keeling over dead laughter that they would have been struck with me having to explain that I was maliciously maimed by a 2-year-old. A 2-year-old kicked my ass, and I didn't want to have to explain that to a doctor, so I did not go to the hospital.
That's better than when my son, who was like 7, said, "Daddy, can you tell me why you have a big nose and a double chin?" And and I was like, that's worse injury when they just tell the truth like that. That's better. That's much worse than just getting a couple scratches, man.
No argument here, because this thing on my face, this scar will heal eventually.
Exactly. And this nose is not going anywhere, and neither is his chin. Not without plastic surgery.
I mean, but again, all the surgery in the world, and you can, if you fix the chin, nose, whatever, I think you look great. But you still have to deal with the fact that somebody told that to you, and that's going to stay with you forever.
Yeah, no, I'm traumatized.
But the other reason why I toughed it out this week is I'm excited for the guest that we have. A terrific singer-songwriter, Happy Hoffman's going to be joining us. I have been playing on repeat her newest single. It's really, really terrific. I've been obsessed with it. She's got a new EP coming out, and there's just a lot to love about this artist. And the one thing I want to ask her about that I've always been curious about is Happy was recently inducted into the Recording Academy as a voting member. Cool. And I've always wanted to learn more about this process and what it means to get it, and having a Grammy vote and everything. And part of it's jealousy. One of my crazy, wacky dreams in life is I would love to become a voting member of the Recording Academy. I could become a non-voting member, right? They'll take my money as a lawyer or whatever. But that just means you get checks in the mail or you get letters in the mail, but you don't get to vote on the Grammys. I would love to be a Grammy voter, but the only way you get to be a Grammy voter is you have to have talent, right? You have to actually release musical works to a sufficient extent and to a sufficient amount of acclaim that you can actually get into the Academy. And I actually did try. This is I'm actually embarrassed to admit this story. I actually did try to get into the Recording Academy as a voting member because I said, I have an audiobook. Break the Business was an audiobook. I recorded it myself. That is technically a Grammy eligible category because audio works are spoken word. And so I submitted the full paperwork. I had people write letters of recommendation for me. I was like, hey, I meet the minimum requirement. And I swear before the ink even dried on my application, I got a very friendly but curt letter from the Recording Academy saying, yeah, you did technically release an audiobook, but you have not reached the requisite level of prestige that we think you're worthy of a Grammy vote.
I'm approaching this show totally different than you are. I'm an artist. I put music out. I'm simply going to ask Happy how much money it will take for me to give her for her to vote one of my songs in so I can get a Grammy. I'm going for bribery. I want to bribe Happy. I want to be the only person to ever bribe a person named Happy in the United States. And it'll be known as Happy Bribery.
So your plan is to
bribery. I'm going for criminal. I'm going for bribery.
Yeah. Is to basically openly orchestrate a fraud on satellite radio.
Yes.
To not only probably cost our friend Happy Hoffman her Grammy vote, but to perhaps give rise to criminal charges of some kind.
I mean, yeah, but if it has to come to that for me to get some recognition, I'm willing to do it, Ryan. You bleed for your kids, I bleed for my art, buddy. That's how it's got to be.
Fair enough. Gideon, I'd like to start our proceedings off this evening by pulling out a file I have. So I have a file of various topics and things that I always like to talk about. And one file I always have in the Break the Business Rolodex is something I call, how is this still not been fixed yet? And there's like a list of things in the music industry and in the entertainment field where you know, different policy problems that are just so terrible, and we all agree that it's a problem and nobody ever fixes it. Like, for example, how hard it is to search for things on the Copyright Office website, or just how hard it is to register a copyright. Like, we all know that these things are terrible, or that it takes 14 months to get a trademark register. We all know that these are policy problems and nobody gets around to fixing them, and it drives me crazy. But I gotta say, Gideon, close to the top of like the why has this not been fixed yet file is performance rights and performance royalties in music that is played on AM, FM radio. And I'm reminded of this because it looks like Congress, yet again, is going to try to fix this exact problem. So a little bit of background for you and for the viewers and listeners out there. The United States of America is one of only 4 countries in the industrialized world that does not pay, that does not require radio stations, AM, FM radio stations, to pay royalties to artists or record labels or owners of sound recordings for when their music is played on the radio. By the way, the other 3 countries that don't do this, China, Iran, North Korea.
Good
Not
company.
what I'd call the company we'd want to keep.
Solid company. Yeah.
Yeah, great. I mean,
Right. Horrific repressive regimes, but other
That's
than
right.
that, other than that, cool.
they have a pleasant time at their annual meeting of the Don't Pay Artists on the Radio Club, those 4 countries.
Right.
And part of the reason why we exist in this current state of the world is that the radio business and, you know, the broadcasting industry is a pretty powerful lobby, and they know how to lobby just the right number of legislators to protect themselves in this law. But there really is no legitimate policy basis for AM, FM radio stations to not have to pay artists and other owners of sound recordings. Because almost every other way that people listen to music in the United States, those people get paid. When music is played on streaming services, the artists and the labels get paid. When music is played on satellite radio, such as Sirius XM, the artists and the record labels get paid. When it's on television and different things like that, there are mechanisms for these folks to get paid. AM, FM radio is this special little carve-out that gets to play by completely different rules, and there's just no justification for it. And so there has been yet again, we are seeing a bill in Congress that attempts to address this called the American Music Fairness Act. We see this bill get introduced every year.
Yeah, totally.
Every year it kind of fades away.
Yeah.
This might be the year that we see a push. There is a strong bipartisan push. The House of Representatives just held hearings recently, a really impassioned testimony from country singer Randy Travis and his wife talking about the unfairness of the current regime in AM/FM radio. This might be the thing that causes this push to be made, but because right now it's a situation where this is just artists and other owners of sound recordings, such as record labels or musicians, are just getting the short end of the stick.
Let me ask you a question before I kind of try to address what you're getting at here. I've read about this for we're going on decades now. And one of the sort of defenses that the radio stations put up when they lobby and when they litigate this issue is they say, we don't pay the artist because it is a public performance or because it is a public, no, it is a public broadcast. And I'm not sure I understand that legal concept or what legal concept they're invoking to defend themselves against a different economic regime. Do you understand what their argument actually is to oppose this?
Well, I mean, there's kind of 2 arguments. One is
Okay.
like the more nefarious argument, which is we have lots of money and we are
Right.
using it to pay the right politicians to get the policy outcome we want. But if you asked me to be less cynical about it, the argument that the broadcasters are going to make and that they've made for decades is radio is already paying these people into exposure, right? At least, I mean, certainly in prior generations, this was more true. Radio was the principal mechanism that people discovered music.
Right.
And so, you know, if music was paid on the radio, the labels and the artists would effectively get paid by people going to the stores and buying their music. And that was always the argument. And I think for a long time, that argument held a little more sway when first of all, when terrestrial radio was the principal way that people discovered music, which is not really the case anymore. And in a time when artists actually made more money off of their recordings because the record business was a lot bigger back then than it is now. But now what you have today is an environment where there are a lot of other types of music delivery models that are analogous to radio, such as satellite radio, such as internet radio, such as DSPs like Spotify and Apple Music. And all of those other lanes of music pay royalties to the artists and to the record labels, but terrestrial radio doesn't. And this isn't just having an impact on American artists in America. It's having an effect on them around the world because other countries look at the fact that the U.S. is not paying artists, and other countries have laws in place that say until the U.S. starts paying these royalties to our artists, we're not going to pay those royalties to American artists when their music is played overseas on the radio.
So let me do something which is very rare in our relationship, which is mostly agree with you with a parenthetical cautionary sort of vibe. And what I mean by that is you would think, and it seems equitable and right, that the composers and the artists should get paid. But the way I understand this world works, okay, is that in effect PROs, get paid by the radio stations, fixed amounts for access to this content, and those PROs get paid a little less from smaller radio stations and more from bigger radio stations. Now, the thing I would caution you about is be careful what you ask for. Having been around a lot of businesses, be careful what you ask for because you might get it. Let me draw an analogy to minimum wage. Who doesn't want to raise the minimum wage for people who really need it? I mean, I think that's a fairly humane concept intrinsically. But here's what actually happens when you raise minimum wage. Prices go up for others, and the economic model is so efficient that somebody pays who shouldn't be paying more somewhere. And so in a business that is faltering at some level, which is the radio business, not as much as they would have everyone believe, because people listen to radio out there in a big way, and it's still important for artists to get on radio. But in an economic model which is faltering, if you start asking them for a radical shift in their economic structure and to pay out more, even if you're righteous, even if you're right, even if you're being equitable, expect disparate impact and unintended consequences, which are really bad. Someone's going to pay who doesn't deserve to pay. When you mess with stasis, which stasis has been around for a long, long time in an economic model, something bad usually happens. And people are not just going to say, okay, legislation has been written, I've litigated and I've lost, and now I'm going to pay the artists and I'm going to pay the composers, and that's just what it is. No. Someone else is going to suffer, whether it's advertisers or the total dollar amounts that ultimately get paid from the radio stations to PROs. Someone's going to pay. And so I'm just saying to you that my instinct here, which I don't think you're going to like, but my instinct here is don't mess with it. When you hoist upon faltering businesses righteous economic causes, what you often do is accelerate failure and disruptions to economic models that screw with everyone. And I do buy at some level the argument that the radio stations are in fact giving the artists some airtime and some plays, and that is a benefit. But I 62.75% agree with you, 62% agree with you, and 38% would say to you, it's not that I disagree, but in the interest of carrying the righteous torch, be careful what hornet's nest you get into, man, because I've seen this in a trillion different economic constructs in business. You mess with something that's been there for a long time in a business that's getting less and less robust, you don't know what kind of house of cards you're sticking a stink bomb into. So that's my cautionary kind of tale for you, although it pains me to say that I generally agree with the spirit of your argument.
Well, a few things there. So first of all, we should make a distinction between artists and labels versus composers here,
Yes,
because
fair enough. Yeah, totally.
composers do get paid by AM/FM radio. As you noted, there are PROs, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. There is a mechanism for songwriters to get paid by radio stations.
Songwriters get paid, the artists don't.
Right, the artists and the labels, the people who own the masters don't.
Right.
And that's what this legislation is trying to fix. And to the argument that this might not, this could potentially lead to the, the death, or at least the slow demise of terrestrial radio, I don't think it will, for the reasons I can articulate. But even if it does, I would contend that if AM/FM radio cannot survive without not paying for the rights to the masters it's using, then it doesn't deserve to survive, because why should it be able to get this supply for free? But aside from that, I do not think that this would destroy radio, mainly because of the additional protections that are built into the law for small radio stations, right? One of the things that the National Association of Broadcasters likes to do to sort of like get people to, get against this bill is they say, what about the mom and pop radio stations? What about the college radio stations? What about the little rural ones? First of all, Cox Radio and iHeart ate all of those up. They ain't let any of them left. If they really cared about those mom and pop stations, they wouldn't have consolidated all of them. But putting that aside, the law actually does have a carve out for those small radio stations,
it does,
so that they can pay either a very, very small, or as little as like $100 a year, or even no royalty in many cases. So this law is mainly going to target the radio station owners that have the significant amount of resources to be able to afford this kind of royalty. And I think you can find that right balance between protecting the mom and pop stations while still making sure that artists and labels and other folks who own master recordings can be adequately compensated for their work.
But Ryan, I'm also sympathetic to the idea that a composer, and sorry if I mixed that up before, it wasn't my intention. I understood the concept before I started speaking. Maybe I mixed it up, sorry. But if I will say this, the person that writes a song is very different than the person that either covers a song or plays it. And the person that writes this, and I'm not saying that an artist that covers a song or plays a song doesn't bring enormous value to it. What would a million Rod Stewart songs be without his performances? Okay, even though other people wrote a lot of his music, but I sort of am sympathetic to the idea that the original signal of the art, and that the artist and that the composer should be prioritized at some economic level above the artist, notwithstanding the fact that the artist may commercialize, make a song famous, so on and so forth. So I'm not as offended by this as you are, and I don't feel that it's like this exigency to go and fix this the way that you do. But again, it pains me to say I'm generally sympathetic to your point of view.
I mean, this is so weird that between the two of us, like, you're the musician, I'm the talentless industry suit, and yet I'm the one who's trying to get like people like you paid. Like, without this law, Gideon King makes less money when his music is played on terrestrial radio, because only Gideon King, the songwriter, gets paid. Gideon King, the owner of his masters, Gideon King, the artist, does not get paid right now. We're trying to fix that in the law, and you're, not so sure about it.
My instinct as a guy that's run businesses and that spends his days looking at businesses is don't. If you win, it'll be a Pyrrhic victory on this. It's going to disturb a very unstable hornet's nest. So sometimes the perfect is the enemy of the good. And that's where I'd leave it be, because it's a faltering business in many respects. But, what do I know?
Daniel Neruda writes in, also, Gideon's argument about doing nothing suggests that you need to accept living in hornet's nest. Oh,
Daniel usually agrees with me, and I just want Daniel. I want to let Daniel know he's fired as my fan, because he Daniel, you usually agree with me, and I don't know, man. I'm gonna hunt you down, man.
this is one of the great struggles we have on this show is Gideon King, the artist, getting into arguments with Gideon King, the businessman and
Yeah, it
investor,
is.
and it's always compelling radio.
It's a little
No,
schizoid.
I am thrilled that you are a staunch defender of the status quo here, and you see no issue with us sharing company with such other artist-friendly nations as North Korea and Iran.
And you can put it in those terms. But what I would say is that I've been around a lot of economic constructs, and there are times to ask for more, and there are times not to. Kind of like when unions would ask for too much from companies like American Airlines and United, and those righteous causes would ultimately result in bankruptcies that destroyed everybody. So again, be careful about imposing the perfect on the good. And that's my trading instinct on what happens here.
So I think the headline that we have is Gideon King, North Korea's got it right.
Come on, man. Come on, man.
No, your point's well taken. Let me talk to you. I want to see if I can bring you in on or continue a conversation that you and I had off the air before the show, to kind of get the musician's perspective on this, because it was something you were bringing up with me. I was like, man, I got to talk with Gideon on the air about this, and I want to give it a few minutes before we bring in our guest, Happy Hoffman, this week. You had a lot to say to me about this recent trend we're seeing lately in live music of the rise of backing tracks. More and more artists, particularly as you're putting on these larger, more ambitious Eras tour style productions, backing tracks are becoming more common, where either some or all of the instrumentation of an artist's performance is not done by the live band on stage, but is being done with pre-recorded tracks, maybe alongside the track. Maybe it's just the backing track, and the musicians are just pretending to play like the Monkees did back in the day. And you had some thoughts about this. Talk to me.
So this is something that's been coming for years and years now. Not coming, it's here, but it's been increasing for years and years now. And just for your audience, essentially, sometimes a lot of the sounds that you're hearing when you go to hear a concert are not actually being played by the musicians. Either they're being added into the mix of what the musicians are playing, or the musicians are actually faking playing it. And so from the standpoint of artistic morality, if there's such a concept, and I think I just might have made that up, but I don't know. It's a little bit kind of it's on the rails, because you would hope that musicians practice and work hard to be able to play their instruments live to compel the audience to engage. And so you can't deny that this growth in backing tracks in live performance is an advancement of the concept of fakery and makes art a bit more plastic. The flip side of it all is, I guess, when I think of what like a Miles Davis or David Bowie or Prince would have said, well, Prince hated this stuff. But when I think of what a David Bowie, who saw always decades into the future, would have said is, it depends on the artist and how you use the tool. I've used backing tracks sometimes, and the good and the good news is, that it constitutes more consistency. We're all still playing our instruments, but we do have ambient noises and effects and things that come in through backing tracks, and even some instruments that are coming through the speakers, the sound system that nobody's playing. Okay, it promotes consistency, beats per minute, getting through the show on time, the arc of the show, the flow of the show, and if you use it as a tool, it can be just another sonic tool to make the sonic landscape cooler, and it can be incredible. That being said, it's getting to a point, and who was it the other day that criticized Taylor Swift for not really singing?
Dave Grohl.
Right. And the spirit of Dave Grohl's comment, and he sort of said, like, listen, Taylor Swift's not even really singing sometimes, and he sort of criticized her. What he was really doing was saying that she's part of the tidal wave of fakery of modern shows. And that's sort of what he was saying. Maybe it's not fair to attack her in that way because she does actually strum a real guitar sometimes and really sing. But I guess it's a double-edged sword. And I guess where I really land on it is it's another tool. I don't want to be one of these people that rejects every new technological advancement, but as audiences, we got to recognize it's a little gross too. Like, it's nice to go see people make mistakes, really play, to say 1, 2, 3, 4 a little slower than they did it in the last concert, so the beats per minute of that song's a little slower, as opposed to a drummer putting on headphones. The song starts at the exact same beats per minute that it started in the last 65 shows. And so I guess we just have to accept the balance between fakery and technological advancement and the fact that a great artist will use any tool well. And so that's what I sort of would rest on. A good artist will use backing tracks in an artful way, but for sure it is changing music radically, and it is really sad in a lot of instances because it's also making young people who are learning to play instruments not have to be as good as Ray Charles or Prince. They can just rely on a computer to play all the crap that they need the audience to hear. So super complex subject. And when I first started using tracks, which I use on about 15% of our songs when we play live, I will tell you some great musicians in my band who have played with everybody from Sting to Aretha Franklin. They freaked. They hated it. And they hated me for it for a while. So it's a super complex topic. And man, as you have more guests on the show, we should talk about it some more, man. It's a really interesting topic.
I would love to get different artists' perspective on this because I do think my answer to how I feel about this is my taste for whether or not I expect an artist to use backing tracks or not use backing tracks. It's going to depend on the artist, and it's going to depend on the show and what my expectations are for that show. Am I going there to behold that person's technical skill and musicianship, or am I looking for a more grandiose overall production? If I'm going to see Yo-Yo Ma in concert, I would be very disappointed if Yo-Yo Ma was playing to a cello backing track because I'm there to see a particular amount of technical skill and musicianship. When I go see the Eras Tour, I'm understanding that what I am seeing is not merely just a musical performance, but it's a whole big honking production. Yeah, and one that logistically cannot be done without backing tracks, right? There are dancers, there are dramatic elements going on. Taylor's like jumping into a fake swimming pool. Like, there's way too many moving parts in a production like that for me to expect or even want a completely live musical experience. That would distract and detract from the show that I'm watching. So I think I'm willing to kind of grade on a curve and judge on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, listen, I don't know what's going on in the show. This is now the second time I generally agree with you. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like we need to talk to the producer and like deal with this because we shouldn't be agreeing this much. But once again, that was very well put. And this is probably the last time I ever compliment you. I don't think I can bear it anymore.
Well, after this brush with death I had with my recent catastrophic face injury, it's caused me to kind of reevaluate some things in life and realize that, like, I need to make peace with the people around me and
show more gratitude. You've been
show more gratitude. Totally. And so, like, I was willing to overlook, like, some of your asinine point of view, your pro-Iran view about royalties and terrestrial radio, and your unnecessary sideswipes on minimum wage in the unions. My God, because again, life is short and life is finite, and I want to spend it just breaking bread and enjoying happy times with the co-hosts that I care so deeply.
I'm not going to respond to those ribbings. I'm going to rise above. You see me rising? I'm rising above.
You're a better man than I, and I know no one who would say different. All right, let us take a break. We're going to be joined by Happy Hoffman in the second segment. It's going to be a blast. Don't go anywhere. Keep checking out Break the Business. Break the Business is presented in cooperation with Ryan A. Kairalla, PA. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA is a law firm providing transactional entertainment legal services, including contracts, business formation, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida. rkpalaw.com.
Streaming services for Break the Business provided by LEK Entertainment. LEK Entertainment is a full-service entertainment company offering everything from consultations to full-scale events and productions, including audio and video productions, voiceovers, staged theatrical productions, script and music development, and streaming services. For more information, visit lekentertainment.com. LEK Entertainment wants to help you bring your story to life.
Thanks for supporting Break the Business. If you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com. You can follow the host, that's me, on Twitter at Ryan Kair, and you can follow the show at the BTB Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, and on all major podcast platforms. And now, let's get back to the show. Welcome back to Break the Business, everybody. Ryan Kairalla here with the brilliant and delightfully bespectacled Gideon King. Thank you for checking us out wherever you're checking us out, whether it's on SiriusXM 145 or on our favorite live stream partner, volume.com, or on any of the places where you check us out, podcast, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, wherever it is. We're glad to have you on this little adventure this week. Let's go ahead and bring out our guest.
Happy Hoffman on the scene, bringing light and all her dreams. Indie tunes that'll make you sway. She's the sunshine in your day. On the Break the Business show, Happy's here to let you know. Songs of joy and pure delight. Get ready for an awesome night.
Our guest this week is an acclaimed indie pop singer-songwriter who Under the Radar magazine called, quote, a confident, soulful, and vulnerable songwriter. Her latest upcoming EP is slated for release later this year, and you can find out more about our guest's work by visiting happyhoffman.com. We are happy to welcome Happy Hoffman on to Break the Business. Hi, Happy.
Hi, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing so well. It is a pleasure to be chatting with you. Let me ask you this right off the bat, and I hate asking this question because I know you probably get this with every interview, and I'm already just struggling with it, but I'm just too curious. I have to know, is there a cool backstory on the Happy name? Because that's a delightful name. It makes me smile just to look at it.
The cool backstory is that my parents are cool and they decided to name me Happy. That's really the story. My mom had a good friend in elementary school who was nicknamed Happy. And when they had me, they decided to name me Happy and spell it a little differently. And here we
dig
are.
it. And I love the musicians that have the cool enough parents that they get blessed with such a good legal first name that they don't have to change it. They already have the cool name and they can just ride with it because you're already Happy Hoffman, or you're already happy. Why do you have to be anything else? I love that. Before you came in the first segment, one of the things that we were talking about was your recent invitation to join the Recording Academy. And thought that was very, very cool. We can give you the little cartoon party horn there, the show's highest honor, to celebrate this wonderful achievement. I was talking about like how jealous I was because I would love to be in the Recording Academy, but I don't have the, talent. And wanted to ask you, because I think there are a lot of other viewers and listeners out there who might be curious, who might want to join the Academy themselves. How did you get this invite? What is the process?
This process was getting nominated by multiple people in the Academy that I've worked with, and then submitting an application of all of my credits, everything that I've been a part of musically, everything I've recorded, written. And then that was months ago, and I was recently accepted. And it's such an honor to be a part of the process and the art.
So what does that service look like? What are some of the things that you're going to be doing now as a member of the Academy? I assume you have a Grammy vote. Are you going to be joining your local chapter and being a part of helping develop the artistic community in your area?
Absolutely. Yes. So I want to be active in my local chapter and yeah, really take the time to listen to what's out there and vote for the art that deserves to be raised up.
Well, speaking of the
That's
art
my
that
plan. I'm brand new, but that's my plan.
I love that. And speaking of art that deserves to be raised up, we're probably violating about 20 or 30 different Recording Academy regulations by even doing this. But I'd like to introduce you to Gideon King, a fantastic recording artist, frontman for Gideon King and City Blog. I am sure down the road he's going to have some fantastic pieces of music that he could really use the assistance of a Grammy voter in helping elevate. Maybe if you see it on a nomination form at some point, you throw my boy a bone. I'm pretty sure active campaigning is against all the rules, but you know, I can't imagine they're going to take your Recording Academy invite right away, right away. So,
How you doing, Happy?
It's so nice to meet you, Gideon, and I was really enjoying y'all's conversation. So yeah, thank you so much for the wisdom.
I mean,
even though Gideon
basic-
doesn't want you to get paid when your music's played on the radio.
Ryan, he loves to just take what I say and twist it like a knife, but it's okay. Like I said, I'm above nasty political rancor. So yeah, nice to meet you, and that's very cool about the Grammy thing. That's really cool.
Thank you. Thank
I'm
you. Yeah,
gonna
so nice to meet
I'm gonna
both of
offer you
y'all.
an under the table bribe to vote for my. In fact, I'm wiring money right now to your account. $5 million to vote some of my songs in. So let's see if that works.
Oh, let's go. We're making deals on this show.
Exactly.
I see.
Ryan's a lawyer. We have a lawyer present, so it's fine. We have attorney-client privilege. We got a lot of stuff covered here. I would
great.
not worry. Happy. This is going to be okay.
Can we not be bribing voting members of the Recording Academy on satellite radio, please?
All right, I take it back.
Feels like a great idea.
Yeah. She's happy.
I mean, like I'm telling you, I'm so jealous of this. Like I was telling Gideon King in the previous segment, it's one of my crazy wild dreams in life. Like it was being a father and getting to vote in the Grammys. And like I'm a dad, so like check, we got that one done. And like
Congrats.
I would always want to, like, I want a Grammy vote so bad, but like, you don't get a Grammy vote unless like you're good at music and like put music
Happy,
out.
Do you there's so many categories. I know, like when we submitted for Grammys, there's so many categories. So like, what is it that you're actually doing? Are you listening in certain categories, or is it like a funnel and you can go into different categories? How does it actually work?
I don't even know if she's had
well-
her first like round of voting yet.
Well, maybe she would know
Gideon,
how it works, yeah.
I'm days in.
Ah.
But from what I understand is you really take the time to listen to all the categories and vote. That's my understanding.
I got you.
So as we get closer to the Grammys, like, can we have you back on the show and just, have you explain to us what the voting experience is like? We're not going to try to sway your vote. I mean, Gideon might, but just because I'm more curious about this process, and like I've pretty much accepted the fact that I'm never going to get to experience it personally, so I'll live vicariously through our guest this week.
Yeah, Ryan, you can ping me anytime. We're buds now.
Oh, love that for me. That's fantastic. And so
And Gideon.
And Gideon too. Well, I mean, clearly you're going to be doing a lot more for Gideon than you ever did for me. Like he's going to be hosting the Grammys within 5 years with you helping him. Let me talk about your latest single, because it touched me quite a bit as a new dad. You have a new song out called Shooting Star, which I've been playing on repeat. It is a loving tribute to your father. And it is not lost on me that whereas your dad gets these beautiful tributes made about him by his daughter, this dad gets viciously attacked by his 2-year-old, causing gashes on his head. So your dad's doing a lot better right now than my son's dad is. But can you talk a little bit about what inspired this song and like what made you want to write a beautiful song about your dad?
Well, first of all, thanks for listening, and thanks for all of that. And I would love to. So I wrote this song over the holidays. I was visiting Memphis with one of my best friends and co-writers, and we were doing some sessions. We were writing, and we started writing this song. We had the melody, and we had some of the lines of the chorus, and then my co-writer Ori Rakib, he said to me, "This song is about your dad." And immediately I was like, oh God, like it it hit me. It hit me hard, and after that, the song really just flowed out of both of us. I'm very close with my dad. I always have been, and it felt really good to express that in a song. Before this, a lot of my solo releases as a solo artist have been about love. My first EP was called Heartbreak Season, um, about love and finding the love that's right for you. And my my latest music has been about different faces of love, um, and different experiences of love. And so it felt exciting to write a song about familial love and about my dad.
What was his reaction when he heard it for the first time?
His first reaction was giving me a line tweak. He was like, "What if he said this instead of this?" It's like,
Oh,
"Oh,
man.
oh, cool, cool." No, but since I think it was like it's a lot to take in. If you listen to the song, you'll understand that.
He gave
And
you
and
notes.
he was like, "What if you said this and that?" I was like, "Actually, yeah." And but no, since then he was really moved, and it's yeah, he's been really moved and touched, and we've both had just like moments of when the song came out, we had this beautiful breakfast together, and we are just had a really tender moment of how much it means to him and to me to
Oh
be
my
able to share it
gosh.
with him.
Happy, who are your I sort of have this like group of like 3 to 6 musicians that have influenced me. And even though everybody on every radio show and every television, like people always ask, like, who are your biggest influences? It's like one of those questions that everybody asks, but to me, it's never a boring question, which is why I'm asking it. Who are your musical inspirations?
Thanks for asking. Um, my biggest inspirations are Joni Mitchell, um,
We've heard of
Bob
her.
Dylan, the Avett Brothers, John Legend, John Mayer, Michael Kiwanuka, and Salt was really influential to me right before I was putting out my EP.
Cool.
What about you?
Oh, this is a
Um,
good question for Gideon. I'm curious about this myself.
lyrically, to me, Bob Dylan is just it's like if you like reading books, like you can't move beyond Shakespeare. There's nothing like Bob Dylan. He's like the John Coltrane of lyrics. So like,
Legend.
I mean, to me, I mean, Bob Dylan's lyrics are like so voluminous, so poetic, so absurdly cynical and dark and beautiful that he's literally on another plane from every other lyricist in history for me. So that's one. Steely Dan in terms of their harmonic content and crazy, totally different postmodern like maniacal, crazy lyrics, and then a bunch of jazz guys, John Coltrane, John Scofield, who I've played with, but Steely Dan, it always sounds super shallow to say, "Oh, I have a favorite band," like you're in 8th grade or something. But I can't help it. I do have a favorite band, and it really is Steely Dan. I think between their harmonic content and the lyrics, there's just never been anything like them, and I'm just waiting every day to wake up and find another one, and I'm trying to be like them at some appreciable level. But those are mine. But Dylan, man, we overlap on Dylan. If you dig Dylan, also Neil Young's lyrics, I would recommend to you highly.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
Gideon, that
yeah,
was a wonderful list. Like there's no skip on there. Like every single one of those artists is top notch. Like,
yeah, yeah.
Happy's making the okay sign. You're absolutely right. But was it necessary for you to drop in that you played with one of those jazz artists? That was
Schofield?
gratuitous. Yeah.
No, no,
That
no.
That was
was,
pretty cool.
He's probably my great in terms of guitar. He's my biggest guitar idol. So I actually wrote him a poem, and that's
Wow.
how he about how he was not as good as Pat Metheny, another guitar player, as a joke. And he said, "Wait," he said, "Let's hang out after that," and that's how I got to know him. He's turned into one of my best friends.
Gideon, let
Wow.
me
So
ask
just
you a song. Yeah. I want to ask
write your
you,
favorite artist
Gideon,
poems.
a songwriting process question based on what Happy said. Because she said when To paraphrase Happy, that when she wrote Shooting Star, once she realized it was a song about her dad, the words, the music, the lyric, it flew out. It was, it almost
Mm-hmm.
wrote itself is the vibe
Mm-hmm.
I got.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it like, have you ever had an experience like that yourself as a songwriter? Is that like a common experience for songwriters? Because anytime I've ever tried to write a song just as a joke, every line is like pulling teeth.
So
And
for me, it's almost binary. It goes one of two ways. What Happy described happens to me. You start writing it, and there's this like idea harmonically or lyrically or something peaks it, and then you kind of hook into what subconsciously has risen. And you're like, wait, the subconscious has risen to the top, and you're like, this is what I'm writing about. And that creates the exact momentum, in my opinion, that Happy was alluding to a minute ago, or 5 minutes ago. And so that's one way. But most of the time when I write songs, I just hang together a lot of just abstract concepts and things, and just let and just let people sort of, read into it what they will. It's like that old thing about literature, like the text reads you. Well, like I remember I would get albums and sit down with them and lie on the ground and listen to them, and certainly I was bringing to the music and the lyrics things that may not have been intended. And so it's like this kind of reverse projection process. So for me, I love lyrics that are just hung together, that almost become the listeners as opposed to your own. I mean, Pink Floyd, of course, Us and Them, and all those weird, crazy, abstract lyrics. And it's like you're just alone in your room projecting all your own bizarre weirdness onto those lyrics, and they're just basically a Rorschach test. And so, like, that's how I write most of the time. But what Happy alluded to before, I cannot emphasize enough, is such a true phenomenon. The subconscious comes to the surface, and then you're like, this is what it's about, and then it carries you through. It's a kind of weird reverse engineering inspiration process. I don't know, Happy, do you know what I'm getting at?
I do. Yeah, it's exactly like you said. It happens. It happens pretty quickly. And when I am writing, sometimes I'll come up with lines and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's really true. And it'll
Right.
come from not the top of my brain, but the deep files of my brain. And
Right.
yeah, you can learn a lot in those places.
How often do you pull back? I find myself, because I'm such a madman, pulling back and saying, "Oh wait, I can't write this. This would be too crazy or too offensive, or might upset my wife. It could upset my brother. It might upset Ryan." Like how often do you write things that in today's world, unlike the days of Frank Zappa, today's world where you almost can't say anything in some respects? How often do you say, no, I love this and it's what I really feel and think, but I'm not letting it. I'm not letting this chicken out of the chicken house.
Those conversations do happen.
Totally.
And
It's crazy,
those
right? It's so
conversations,
frustrating.
yeah, one of my co-writers, he's like, that's the thing you have to say. And a lot of times he wins and I will write the line, even if it feels really vulnerable and like I'm just putting my heart right out there for
Right,
people.
right, right.
But that's the whole point. I
Yeah.
think a lot of times I was like, I really can't say that, just to honor whatever it is or the relationship, or I
Totally,
can't put that
totally,
out in the
totally.
world.
Right, right, right.
But it does happen.
Right, right,
And
right, right, right.
but I do think that's what makes music so magical, or at least my experience of it is when you really can share vulnerably, people feel it and people know that it comes from a real place.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Happy, I read that earlier in your career you focused more on religious music and then have slowly sort of transitioned into pop. Can you tell us a little bit about that transition as a performer and what inspired it?
absolutely. I got my start in music professionally, um, playing religious music, getting hired to travel around the country, leading services. And so my experience of music was for a long time was in in service of prayer and connecting to myself and in order to help people feel and connect. Um, the music that I play now, the indie pop music, actually, there's it, and many times it feels kind of similar in that I'm really connecting to something that's very real for myself. And I feel my goal is to help people access emotion. So the transition um, felt smooth. I mean, it was, I still, every so often I do still play in those spaces, in religious spaces. And I feel lucky to do so because I feel like it's, part of what I've been called to do. And so I do. Um,
Are
yeah.
there any stylistic techniques or uh, common performing attributes that that music that religious music tends to use that you find yourself employing in pop music?
Well, I think my philosophy is know the material, really know the material, and then let source flow through you, prepare, be super prepared. And then when I'm performing or sharing in those spaces, it's like, okay, what's going to come out in this moment? That only works if you're really prepared and you know the music in your bones, um, and you can be in that space of, okay, what's happening and what's flowing out in this moment.
Ryan, I cannot share with you how important it is. You would think that the concept of knowing the music well is like a given, that it's like a precept. But like the number of times that like you get in a studio with someone and they like don't know the music and you're like, "You know what? Like you don't know the music and you could never bring the most beautiful elements of yourself to this unless you know it. You can't even depart from it unless you know it." And that's of course Miles Davis said that of course, and so did Jimi Hendrix. But like that is like one of my biggest frustrations, and so like happy, like I agree with you. If what you're saying, which I might be sort of like weirdly transmuting it, but if what you're saying is know it really well, and that's the only way to be is to let yourself flow through it and to actually depart from it in beautiful creative ways and then to come back. If that's what you're saying, I completely agree. And it's super frustrating to me when I play with people who don't know the freaking music. So that is like so. And if that's not what you're trying to say, then I'll just leave the show, I guess.
And that's what I'm saying. Retweet. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
yeah, retweet, right, right.
Oh, I dig that. Tell us a little bit about the upcoming EP. I mean, I enjoyed very much listening to Shooting Star. I want to see like more from that kind of subject area and see what else is going to be coming out. What can we expect and when can we expect it?
Thank you for asking. Yeah, so the rest of the EP will be coming out later this fall, at the end of August, but I have another single coming up in 2 weeks. It's called Close, and it describes the feeling of being close to somebody, in the same room with somebody, but feeling a million miles away. Um, and I've actually been playing that song for a few years, and I'm really excited to finally release it. I've been playing it at shows, and people had been asking for it, which is so nice and cool. And I'm really really excited to put this song out into the world.
I love that. Let us know if there's anything we can do to help get that song out there. If you like, please feel free to send us a copy of it. If you want to, if you're cool with us playing it on at the end of one of our shows, we can put it on Sirius XM. We'd love to get your music out into the world. I really enjoyed Shooting Star, and I'd love to experience more of it.
Wow, I would love to share it with you, and yeah, thank you. I will. So that song's coming out, and then another song after that is called Real Love. And the line is, if it's real love, then let's really love and let go. So the idea
Oh,
of, if you love someone and you're moving into a relationship, then like let's really go in and love fully. And I'm excited about that. That one will also be released with a music video that was choreographed and shot by the Hollywood Ballet,
Oh,
by
cool.
two really, really stunning dancers. Um, and I'm so excited for that one as well. And then
we
another song.
We should definitely share your excitement here. That's very cool. You can find out more about our guest work by going to Happy. That's HAPPIE, Hoffman.com. Happy, before we let you go, we got one last question for you. Do you have any last tips for the indie creators out there to help them move their careers forward?
Yes, just keep creating. And I say, sometimes I say my job is to feel and express and then share it. And so stay in that process and keep putting things out there. Take little steps, and eventually you'll see that you'll look back and you'll see that the little steps have really taken you somewhere. But keep creating, keep staying true to what is real for you, and keep going.
Congratulations on all your success so far and the success sure to come. Our thanks to Happy, our thanks to Gideon King and producer Lauren, and thanks to all of you viewers and listeners for checking out Break the Business. We'll see you next week.